2022. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. Coleman. Ms. Materney.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Nuysen.
Here.
Mr. Weber.
Here.
Please join me and stand if you're able and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes of the council meeting of April 5th, 2022.
Thank you, Mayor. I know everyone received a copy of the council meeting minutes as well as the public hearings. I didn't receive any objections, and if no one has any objections, we will consider both the meeting minutes of Perrysburg City Council held on April 5th, 2022, as well as the public hearings approved.
Second.
No objection.
No objections.
Oh, I'm sorry. No
objections.
objection.
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. Special reports, we have no special reports. Letters, communications, citizen concerns.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Bourne, 125 East Front Street, Perrysburg, Ohio, 43551. Yesterday, April 18th, I went into the atrium of the city building on the way to pay my city income tax at the Tax and Administration Office. The police officers on duty told me that this would not be permitted. They told me that they would have to carry my payment into the Tax Administration Office. When I asked them if they would bring me a receipt, they said that they could not do that. They could not do this. When I asked them the reason for this policy, they said they had been ordered to do it. Now, since I paid in cash, I have no record of payment. There was also another man whom I did not know who attempted to pay and was treated in the same manner. I came here tonight to state for the record that I believe that this to be a total violation of basic civil rights, and I would like to know what possible justification the administration can offer for allowing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take that up with the police and see what, and get back to you if something's appropriate. Thank you very much. Any other letters, communication, citizens, concerns? If not, mayor's report, just a couple items first. Want to thank all the residents and community members who have volunteered their time in the last couple of Saturdays and those that will volunteer in the next couple of Saturdays for cleaning up our parks. We really appreciate all their efforts, and we think that really is one of the reasons that Perrysburg is a great place to live, because people are willing to sacrifice their Saturday mornings in adverse weather conditions as well to help clean up the park. So I want to also recognize Judy Hagan and her team for organizing that. It's really a very successful event every year, especially since it didn't happen for a couple of years because of COVID. Nothing else other than the administration has brought on the agenda, and it's up to council what it wants to do, Resolution 42/2022 regarding the water tower. Council approved putting money in for a particular project. We didn't have a price quote, so there was no specific amount. Amount allocated was $55,000. This is a changeover above my authority to proceed. We understand that council gave clear direction, but now we've started on that process. There's been much debate about this topic, but the administration does not feel comfortable going forward above the threshold amount, because that was not specifically identified when the money was set aside as part of the budget. So we bring that to your attention. We think it needs to be considered. We do have a time pressure. We understand that Corey's not here, so if you want to wait, that's fine. We do think that does impact possibly the ability to move forward with what council intends. I made my views on whether this is a good idea or a bad idea very clear, but I do not have the authority to sign a change order above $25,000. which is what you're asking me for. So we need to, council needs to take some action either today or next council meeting regarding this matter.
I know Mr. Coolman's not present, and if council's in agreement with that, we would hold up until the next council meeting.
I believe you take a possible risk of not being able to get them the answer in time to do it.
Do we know that for a fact, or are we just assuming that?
We talked to people today and we can report what we know.
2 weeks?
So they have already begun, to the best of our knowledge, working on the stencils that you all requested. That work, whatever that work is, completed one way or another, will have to be paid for, whether something changes or doesn't change with this council. We will have to pay for that work because we requested that work be done. This change order is really just a formality on what you all voted on in February, unless the opinions of city council have changed, because the contingency for the contract was $43,000 approximately. This change order is $47,000. It's outside the scope of the original agreement. And please keep in mind, even if it were $43,000, then we'd have no contingency money left at all for anything that actually comes up as an issue with this project. So this is just you granting us the authority to amend the contract and to add $47,000 to the base contract that will leave us the $43,000 contingency, so that we, as things come up, don't have to come back to you when those things happen, as happened with every contract.
But the real question is, does delay impact?
If we delay, we may pay for work that you all don't want done ultimately. That's my only statement.
In speaking with the city engineer, the construction firm commenced their art section to start producing the mural that's out there, reproducing it in terms of the stencils. And I know Councilman Coleman was concerned about the color and the font. They have the Pantone, they have the font. So they're working on those. We don't know if they're complete yet, if they're halfway done or not. But until we know for sure what this council intends to do, I don't know if those stencils that we've commissioned are going to be used. If it's going to be something different, then I have to re-engage with the contractor and have new stencils made with whatever that is. My understanding is that this is a 6-week project. That's all that the contract calls for. And that started last week with starting to drop off materials and starting to mobilize. They'll be on site next week. We've been drawing water down in that tank in preparation for this. The final 1/3 of the tank will be used to actually clean the tower off once it's sandblasted. And then they're in there doing the repairs and starting the painting process right away, because that tank can only be without water for 30 days. That is an obstacle that we have before us. If council chooses to take different action down the road, or even this action that may delay the contractor in actually finalizing the painting of the tower, they'll have to leave, they'll have to go to their other projects that they've committed to. They will find time to work us in to their schedule. It'll be more than the $47,000 because we'll have to pay remobilization fees to that contractor, which could again require a different change order down the road, even if it is the mural, but the mural has not been decided on formally in terms of that contract change. So time is imperative in that sense. But again, we can work with whatever council decides, just understanding that it may require new production of new stencils. It may require remobilization fees, which again leads to additional change orders, because that contract has to remain empty in order for that painting to take place, and it can only be done during 2 different times during the year. It's either now or it's sometime in the fall, and then we are working at the mercy of the contractor's schedule.
And also the weather.
Correct.
So to make a long statement short here, 2 weeks isn't going to destroy the project at this point.
In terms of destroying the project,
If
the project will ultimately get done. It may not be this year. It may be next year. And the cost to do
That's not the question, though.
$47,000 would be another cost.
The question is if this gets approved by May 3rd, that's not going to hold anything up at this point. If it's a 6-week project and we're 1 week in, this would happen within
Last
that
year,
time
we were
frame.
1 week in, this is the second week, I believe, of the project. They started mobilizing sometime last week, so the clock starts ticking then.
So last week would be 1 week into today, doing the math, and then
But they're on site next week, you said?
They're fully on site next week and starting the sandblasting
Tuesday
process.
following week. I mean, this has become a pretty significant public issue. I hate that. I mean, I think a full council should probably decide it.
We completely understand that. I mean, we'll work with what you tell us, well, and if council feels it's appropriate.
The contractor will do whatever the contractor needs to do, and if that means he leaves site to go to another location and comes back sometime in the fall or the spring, then that's what it is.
If we wait 2 weeks, he's gonna stop this project and go somewhere else?
I just do not know if council chooses to not do what the vote represents from back in February, that requires new stencils to be made, which take a couple of weeks to produce.
let's go with the assumption that no, there isn't a change on that, and the delays in 2 weeks. If it's the stencils that are already being created, it would just be more of a formality at that point.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The weather cooperates.
Weather is always going to be a factor in a
Yeah.
project like this.
Exactly.
We don't know if we're going to have a wet spring, early summer or not. And the same can be said in the fall. We could have
Yeah.
a very wet fall that could impact that as well.
But mobilization costs are can add up a lot quickly.
And I don't recall what the mobilization costs were in this initial mobilization.
you
I know
know
it was a
it's-
line item, but I don't recall the dollar.
And it'll be more because of the change item.
So obviously, it's up to council
Up
to
to
decide.
council to decide. Okay. Council is going to wait, basically the sense of council.
I do think we should have a full council to have that vote. And so that's just my thought.
I don't know if it will change the outcome of the vote. I don't think it will, so kind of move to wait.
Just bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
Very good. City Administrator, do you have any report?
I do not.
Finance Director? Law Director?
I do. Mr. Mitchell has filed for annexation of property that he owns that has gone through the steps that are necessary with the Wood County Commissioners and is now for all of you. I sent you electronically that application and that information today. You are not voting today. This is just the informational session. Mr. Mitchell's here, he's going to talk to you about his property and what it is that he's asking to annex. You have to vote. You can't vote before 60 days, which puts us at June 7th for this vote. If you fail to vote within 180 days, then you deny the annexation, just to put it simply where we are. And I will let Mr. Mitchell explain his property.
Good evening. My name is Steve Mitchell with Mitchell Development Company. Just a point of clarification, we don't own the property yet. It's owned by the Diocese of Toledo. We're in contract to purchase it. The 20 acres are located in the northwest intersection of Park Gillis and Five Point. It's immediately adjacent to a current project we're developing in Perrysburg called Coventry Point. This would be an extension of that subdivision if we were approved ultimately with zoning. Of the 20 acres, there's approximately 4 acres. There's a former cemetery, former Catholic church, St. Mary Mother of Sorrows. We've had multiple meetings with both the diocese and descendants of family members that used to be buried there, may still be buried there. Our intention is to have that be a non-developed area. I believe you've seen a copy of the agreement we've entered into with the diocese. They've agreed to maintain it in perpetuity, mow it, et cetera, So I'd be happy to answer any questions. We, at this point, obviously have not submitted a zoning request, but we intend to if we're successful with the annexation.
Any questions?
No, the only question I had, Steve, and I must have left my papers at the office, is the property that was a former cemetery, that's located on one of the roads? As opposed to being in.
The church, as we understand it, was located on the rear of the property, north 4 acres, where at some point in time, this is going back over 100 years, there was a cemetery next to the parish. At some point in time, the church, I believe, thought they moved all of the graves, but the descendants believe that there are still some on the property, and we've just said, look, we're not going to touch that area. But it's the north 4 acres.
It's not right on.
It's not on the road.
Right.
It's not like you'll see in rural areas where there'll be a cemetery
No.
right out on the road.
No, the land was farmed for years and years and years, and I believe the diocese, when we got a contract, stopped farming it, this portion of it a year ago. So we intend to create some type of access for the family. There are some remnants from the old church that the family would like to put on the property, and so we'll work with the planning staff to figure out the best way to do that.
Steve, the diocese has agreed to
Yes.
maintain
Yes.
this?
Yep, we've entered into an agreement with them, and we intend to, you should have, I think, got a copy of it, but we're going to record it.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Close the property, but they've been very amenable to making this happen, and, kind of stayed in its present state. Took a while.
The descendants who think there may still be remains.
Yes.
They're okay too.
Yes, we've had multiple meetings with them. I don't think Gene is here today, but we've had them engaged in this project from the beginning, and I think we've reached what's best for all parties involved.
So did I hear you say the cemetery portion would be 4 acres?
Yes.
Church.
We're going to, since nothing's marked there, we're just going to call this a non-development area. It would be some type of recognition of what used to be a cemetery and church, but there's no grave markers, there's nothing on the property anymore. But there's been a lot of Wood County Historical Society's got a whole slew of information on it, that they know that something was here at one point in time, so we have no desire, no intention of wanting to develop that part of the property.
Yeah, I actually have a photo. I have a photo of that cemetery and the church. So it was definitely there.
Yep.
What's that date back to?
1890s, I think, is when the church, was taken down.
It burned down a couple of times, and
Yeah.
the second time it burned down, I believe St. Rose had started, and they consolidated that location. Good history.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions? All right. President of Council.
Thank you, Mayor. It's brought to my attention of a concern that was a parking change over on Walnut and 3rd Street. And I just wanted to have that conversation at Safety Committee, so I want to kick that over to you, Barry, if you don't mind, for your next Safety Committee to have on the agenda regarding the no parking sign that is up there in that corner right now. So, that's the only thing I have.
We certainly can put that on the agenda. Thank you.
For the new, yeah, that's,
For the 1st Street
think-
Market.
yeah, well, Angels.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Walnut and
It's on
3rd.
Walnut.
Yeah, it's on one, yeah, I think she called me there.
Yep, that's the only item I have for my reports on the report.
Thank you. Committee reports, finance.
Thank you, Your Honor. Finance and Economic Development Committee met on April 12th, 2022. Meeting was called to order at 5:34 PM by Chairman Mark Weber. Committee members present were myself, Jonathan Smith, Tim McCarthy. Also present were Bridget Cabot, City Administrator, Amber Rathburn, Finance Director, Kayla Trego, Deputy Finance Director, Steve Bronder, Income Tax Commissioner, and Kelly Chalfant, Human Resources Manager. We had the approval of the prior month's minutes. There were no objections. Were approved 3-0. Mr. Smith noticed on the credit card statements that the Utilities Department has purchased labor law posters. He wanted to know if this is something HR provides to all the departments. Ms. Chalfant explained that the city has a subscription to a service for that. And Ms. Chalfant will talk to Alice Godsey or Matt Coma about this. CRA review, Glenn Grisdale, principal at Reveille and Economic Development consultant for the city, wanted to give the Finance Committee an update on the Wood County Tax Incentive Review Council and the incentives monitoring that was done for fiscal year 2021. No issues are reported. Companies exceeded or met their performance standards in regards to property investment, job creation, and payroll, even with complications from COVID-19. All Perrysburg schools and Penna Career Center donations are current or have been invoiced and are expected to be paid. Mr. Smith was curious if anything will be changed with CRAs with people working remotely from home. Mr. Grisdale explained that most of the current CRAs are hands-on jobs where things must be done in person, so the majority of those employees could not work virtually from home. Mr. Smith wants to be sure with future CRAs that we make sure the jobs being created are here in Perrysburg, especially with many working remotely now. The establishment of the new fund for One Ohio. Ms. Rathburn explained that the Auditor of State requires that the city set up a new fund for funding provided by One Ohio MOU. The committee is recommending 3-0 for this to go on to City Council. Delta Dental renewal, Ms. Rathburn stated that the city has been with Delta Dental for several years and that their rates have not increased since 2016. Beginning 4/1/22, their rates increased 5%, and Mr. Holzmer, Savage and Associates, recommends staying with Delta Dental. The committee recommended this 3-0 as well. Commercial card agreement, Ms. Rathburn explained that this is an agreement with Huntington Bank. There's a vendor that IT is purchasing from that only accepts credit card payments, and Huntington offers a virtual credit card with a one-time generated number. So going forward, additional vendors that accept credit cards and do not charge fees may be paid with a virtual card to take advantage of earning rewards. Any rewards would be credited to the general fund. The committee is recommending this 3-0 to City Council. Our credit card policy update, Ms. Rathburn stated that the credit card policy needs to be updated to allow for the use of the virtual credit cards. She added that the Finance Department will not pay any vendors that charge fees to use virtual cards. A change is also being made to allow for any rewards earned to be credited to the general fund. Mr. Smith suggested language for non-virtual credit cards that fees cannot be any more than $10. Ms. Cabot stated that over the next few months, they can take note of where fees are charged and try to avoid those places. Mr. Smith wants to get the law director's opinion on the definition of a virtual credit card and consider adding language for existing traditional credit cards in the future. And as an update, since then, the language has been changed to read, no payment using the one-time secure virtual method shall be made to vendors that charge a fee for using a virtual card. So the committee recommended 3-0 send on to City Council for this as well. Investment policy update, Ms. Rathburn explained 2 recommended updates to the investment policy from 2009. The new investment broker, UBS, recommended that commercial paper be included as an investment option, which is now allowed by the ORC. It was also recommended that the length of investments go from 36 months to 60 months, which is again allowed by the ORC. The committee is recommending this 3-0 to City Council. A change order with Software Solutions, Ms. Rathburn stated that this is for the finance software they are training on right now. Set up for pre-printed, pre-numbered checks were included in the original agreement. The change order will give finance the opportunity to use blank check stock, which will be more cost-effective in the long run and will allow them to have multiple users as well. Mr. Smith wanted to know if the training is a one-time or if it occurs throughout the year as needed. Ms. Rathburn responded that Software Solutions has been recording all of the trainings so that they can watch them back anytime and that they have been great to work with so far. The committee is recommending this 3-0 to City Council. Quarterly income tax review, Mr. Bronder stated that they collected about $1.7 million for the month of March, and that was a fairly strong month. The first quarter of 2022 collections are up 33% year to date, but there was a large payment still from February 2022 that is still skewing the numbers as it may need to be refunded one day. Finance Director's report, Mr. McCarthy wanted to know if MTM Transit is Perrysburg Transit, which Ms. Rathburn confirmed is correct. Mr. McCarthy also is curious if Perrysburg Transit not offering service on Sundays will change anytime soon. Ms. Cabot explained that there was a drastic decline in requests for ridership in conjunction with being down one dispatcher. There was not enough staff to service rides on Sundays. They are hoping that the request for rides on Sunday will go up and are actively looking for a new dispatcher. Mr. Smith noticed a large charge for business cards. Ms. Rathburn explained that this is a payment was the the payment to Bank of America, which is a citywide credit card. Regarding health insurance funding, the fund ended March with over $400,000, which continues to look good. Ms. Rathburn said we are not expecting any large claims at this time. In other business, Mr. Smith would like to sit down with Ms. Cabot and Ms. Sandretto regarding the short-term rentals, which was discussed at the prior Finance Committee meeting. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned at 6:25 p.m. So now we have several pieces of legislation. A couple of them are finishing up on with the street tree assessment and also the ARPA funds. So starting off, I would like to introduce Resolution 23, 2022 for its third and final reading, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 23, 2022, a resolution declaring it necessary to provide for the removal and special treatment of shade trees and controlling the blight and disease of same, and for the planting, maintaining, trimming, and removing shade trees in and along the streets and public right-of-way of the city of Perrysburg.
I move that Resolution 23, 2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes. I would like to introduce Resolution 25, 2022 for its third and final reading, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 25, 2022, a resolution declaring city council's intended use for coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery, AKA ARPA funds.
I move that Resolution 25, 2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion.
Did you happen to look into to see if we could use the remaining funds for, say, anything with like 501c3 or regarding local businesses?
We did, I did look a little, but not too much. I think my view was that it wasn't, it was kind of hard to measure how we're going to do that fairly. And that, your point was well taken, that if we could somehow contribute some of it towards a local business, but the bigger issue, or at least in my mind, was that that wouldn't be really a easy way to measure fairness or appropriateness to one party as opposed to another. And one of the goals, I think we've, at least from the administration's point of view, is that for the greater good of the community, and maybe we would need to access some of that, use other resources to help in that regard. That was my
Well,
opinion.
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point.
And I would just like to add, and I said this in Recreational Committee, that this is a list of pent-up needs, and that I just hope it allows council and administration to think about what we can incorporate in our regular budget in the future. So these will be taken care of for a long period of time, but it also represents that we haven't been taking care of some things in the past.
There's a backlog.
There is.
Fair point.
I think it's important to note, too, that most of those items on that list will have to still be voted on. They're not, it's just not automatically that we're voting tonight that they, you know, that they're all going to be done, right?
Well,
That
right.
they're all going to be voted on.
Just like
most
the
of them.
resolution, we come back to council.
Anything
or
over
anything
25, some of them are under 25,000.
Yeah. Some of them probably would be report out that they require actual legislation, but we would
Correct.
certainly keep council informed regarding these projects.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Moving on, I would like to introduce Resolution 37-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 37, 2022, authorizing an agreement with Delta Dental for the provision of dental insurance coverage for the city of Perrysburg for the period of April 1, 2022 through March 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 37-2022 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
The next three resolutions are housekeeping items, more or less, so if there are no objections, I'd like to introduce them together.
I do. We'll get through here separately.
Okay? I'd like to introduce Resolution 38, dash 2022, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third reading.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 38, 2022, a resolution entering into a commercial credit card agreement with Huntington National Bank.
I move that Resolution 38, 2022 be passed.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
No.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to introduce Resolution 39, 2022. We move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 39, 2022, a resolution updating the City of Perrysburg's credit card policy.
I move that Resolution 39-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I would like to introduce Resolution 40-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 40, 2022, a resolution updating the City of Perrysburg's investment policy.
I move that Resolution 40-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce Resolution 41-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 41, 2022, authorizing change order number 1 to the agreement with Software Solutions originally approved by Resolution 55, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 41-2022 be passed.
You are the only participant in the conference.
Second?
Please press any key on your keypad.
Roll call, please, sorry.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes. I'd like to introduce Ordinance 27-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 27, 2022, authorizing all actions necessary to establish the One Ohio Fund.
I move that Ordinance 27-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Next meeting of the Finance and Economic Development Committee is scheduled for Tuesday, May 10th at 2022 at 5:30 PM. That's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Safety Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have a report, but I do have a resolution that I would like to introduce. And I would like to introduce Resolution 43, 2022, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 43, 2022. A resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Atlantic Emergency Solutions not to exceed $874,869 for the purchase of an Enforcer PUC rescue pumper fire truck and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 43, 2022 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just had a question. Where this will get us up to 875, and then I'm in the wrong line of work, because they raised their cost 5% in January, and they're gonna go up another 7.5% May 1.
Correct.
So with the 75 out of the 23 budget, doesn't that still leave us like 50,000 short?
So what's been transpiring the last, I'll say, four or 5 days? But let me step back. So you may recall during 2021, we were working on the 2022 budget. And during that course of time, I think we mentioned at several of the different committees that we had more requests for funding than we felt that we had dollars for within the existing revenue estimate at that time. And lo and behold, at the end of the year, that truly was the case. So we budgeted for everybody's request with the exception of like 5. And I think we told you our intent was to bring those back during the 2022 amended budget process to have those funded. One of which was a fire engine. The second one was the renovation of the second floor of the fire station. One was a refuse truck. Police station, wrong station. And I think we had 2 more large requests for equipment. So we looked to divert those to the amended budget process. So we get through December, the finance director calculates excess revenue over expenditures, and we start looking at funding the items that we had deferred. Plus, we had several new requests come in as well. While that was going on, we were informed by Captain Whitmore, who is the large equipment committee chair, that the manufacturer, Pierce, was putting into place an across-the-board increase, that if you didn't have your order in by the end of January, there was a 5% increase. Well, we were just in the midst of beginning our budgeting process for the amended budget, so we knew that that was not going to happen. But what we didn't know in the meantime is that once we got the final numbers back from the finance director of what we could fund, we still couldn't fund all of the items that were being requested. So we did go back to the fire chief and ask them if they could take a lesser dollar amount and still get a piece of equipment that worked for them. At the time, the fire chief did think that that was the case. So I believe the engine committee got relayed that information. They started looking at what they would not be able to have on this engine that they wanted to have on that engine, which would match a 2017 engine that we purchased. So their goal was to look at that 2017 engine and maybe improve upon some of those specifications, but have the base model be that model. So we had the 5% increase in January. There may have been a subsequent price increase during that period of time. Then we find out that they're doing another across-the-board increase of 7.5% at the end of this month. So the fire division did come to us. We talked with them extensively on Friday with their captain that was in charge of this. I think I talked to him on Saturday maybe, talked to him yesterday and maybe today as well. And they've come up with a fire engine that adds some options back that lack of $75,000 took off the table. And it's not the same model as the 2017 model, but it's closer to that model. They put back a couple options. In particular, they put back the PUC chassis, which is the pumper under chassis option, which they like in the 2017 model. I think it speaks some to maneuverability as well, I think Captain Whitmore mentioned. So they like that option. They also like the option of adding a deck gun onto the front of the fire truck. So we worked with them. We believe that this is the right thing to do. We believe it's a good purchase. It's a 25-year purchase. But they do know they're not getting the 2017 model in all of its, I won't say bells and whistles, but in all of its specifications, because actually that truck now is over $1 million. So what we thought was going to be $875 back in middle of summer is now over $1 million, just because of supply chain issues and the supplier increases. So obviously they're passing those along to their customers. But if we lock in with specifications and a contract by the end of the day, April 27th, we can guarantee and lock in our price. So if the supply chain issues continue or if new ones come about, our price is still the price. So we feel comfortable about that, and our finance director and myself had a conversation earlier this evening after I had a conversation with Captain Whitmore again. And if council approves this, what we're still going to work on, because we know what the ceiling is, this 875,000 or 874,000 and some change, there still might be a way for us to achieve some discounts by prepaying certain portions of the truck ahead of time, and we could get a discount and have our final payment be less than that 874,000. So we'll continue to work on those over the next couple days, but Captain Whitmore was talking to the vendor about which items we could prepay ahead of time that would result in a discount. So that was new information that came my way yesterday as I was coming back.
And that's why we would normally have taken this to the committee, but there was a time of the essence to lock in the price. So that's why I came directly to council.
Well, so we'll commit to the 875 tonight, and then the
That is our
additional 75
request.
will come in the 23 budget.
The additional, yes, it could come during the 2023 budget or when the final delivery takes place. And ultimate, because right now they're telling us it's a 21-month to 24-month delivery date on the vehicle. So we can budget between now and that period of time over the next 2 years or next year, and/or it might not be the full 75,000. It could be something a little bit less than that due to a discount that we may be able to take advantage of.
Bridget, was it the engine committee that decided for those two options and maybe not
Correct.
the generator and
Yes.
the light tower?
Correct.
Okay.
And my understanding is some of that rationale and reasoning is because we do have other pieces of apparatus that do have that on it. So when we're responding to a structure fire or a multi-vehicle accident on the highway, on the freeway, that we're bringing more than one piece of apparatus, and/or our neighbors who are mutual aid or automatic aid partners are bringing equipment as well, and they would be able to help supply that if we didn't, because like we currently have it on our 2017 model and I believe on our tower. So in the case of a big event, we're going to bring everything we can, calling in all personnel as well as our mutual and automatic aid partners.
That sounds acceptable to all you fellas? All right.
That's what was really relayed to me by Captain Whitmore.
See, they can smile.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
I would thank you. I would just, before you, and Councilman, I would like to thank the committee for their working with the administration in the last little bit to save the city some money and get a valuable piece of equipment.
The Safety Committee's next meeting is April 26th on Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Our meeting was called to order on April 12th at 6:32 p.m. by Chairperson Jonathan Smith. Committee members present were Jonathan Smith, Barry Van Huzen, and Corey Cool. Also present was Bridget Kavitz, the administrator. We skipped the easy stuff. We'll go right into the McKinley Woods Park. Mr. Smith stated that the intention with the park is to keep it passive without athletic fields and with a walking path and minimal amenities. Joan Elmore has lived in the neighborhood since 1995 and was told by Dole Homes when purchasing their home that the woods would remain undeveloped. The land was supposed to remain an area for animals and that there is an abundance of wildlife that lives on this piece of land. Ms. Cabot explained the history of this parcel of land to the committee members and concerned neighbors of the potential of McKinley Woods Park. Mr. Smith wants neighbors to be involved in the exploration process of this park so that they can find use for the land while keeping it as natural as possible. Wanda Guy stated that they paid extra when purchasing their home for a view of the woods and were told by Dole Homes that it would not be developed. Well, the land was supposed to be designated scenic and remain in an undeveloped natural state. Ms. Guy stated that the park would be an invasion of privacy to nearby neighbors and that traffic would be an issue. Russell Mills added that if the park does happen, a traffic study should be done and he would not be surprised if a traffic light would be needed at Cove Court and Fort Meigs Road. Mr. Mills does not want to see a parking lot in their backyards, and the marginal value of the park is not enough for him. Mr. Kuhlman stated this is a city-owned property at this point, and they are elected by the entire city, so they have a duty to not just focus on specific neighborhoods, but how they can serve the entire community. Mr. Kuhlman added that he wants to see neighbors involved in the steering committee for this park. Mr. Mills stated that they feel blindsided by this process and that as someone that would live close to this park, he does not want to see it happen. Mr. Smith would like to hear from even more residents in the neighborhood. Ms. Cabot stated that there is no legal documentation stating that this park would always remain undeveloped, as the neighbors were told when purchasing their property in 1995. Mr. Van Heusen stated that when this land was donated, he had heard the word preservation and that parks can be preservations. The guy wanted to know what is more secure for them, having it developed as a passive park or risk leaving it and then the land get developed in the house. Mr. Kuhlman believes it is best to use a city resource in a way that is agreeable. Mr. Kuhlman added that in the Planning and Zoning Committee, they'll be looking at the zoning categories and is open to exploring language to create natural parklands. Mr. Mills wanted to know if public engagement is built into the design process of the park. And Mr. Smith responded that there are typically 2 public meetings built into this process. Mr. Kuhlman stated that logistically speaking, they are on their 3rd and final reading of the ARPA funds, which we just passed. Mr. Smith added that these are ideas and goals. If passed, it does not mean that funds must be spent on those specific items. Ms. Cabot can add Cove Court to the city's internal traffic committee due to the speeding down Cove Court. One neighbor suggested having some stop signs, so there is at least a reason to slow down along Cove Court. Mr. Smith thanked everyone for coming out and said that they will keep them updated along the way. Reporting of the PrAC meeting, Mr. Smith said that he got a lot of great feedback from the PrAC members. They talked about the possibility of trying to get a grant for a kickback wall in one of the parks. Mr. Smith will forward the PrAC report to everyone. He is trying to keep PrAC members updated on various projects as they are moving forward with those. Summer recreation programs, Ms. Cabot would like to have Mr., is it pronounced Brigode? Do I have that pronounced right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Come in twice a year at the start and end of program to give the committee an overview. With Rec Desk this year, citizens are able to register and pay for summer recreation programs all online. Ms. Cabot stated that Rec Desk has been very successful so far. They are hoping to soon launch booking and paying for rentals for the Schaller Building and park shelter houses on Rec Desk as well. Mr. Smith had a concerned citizen ask about an out-of-city for-profit organization getting a field rental for free. He wanted to know if the city did anything different for-profit versus nonprofit organizations as far as field rentals go. Ms. Cabot answered that everything is the same for both, and it is not easy to define what nonprofit is because many of these soccer organizations charge a fair amount of money and pay their staff. Mr. Smith likes the idea of them being more easily connected to the public, which can be done using things like Rec Desk, and would like to see this expand. In other business, Mr. Smith noted that there have been complaints about the locations of porta potties at Rotary Park recently, and that they are not being tended to. Mr. Kuhlman stated that there have been some issues with foul language and provocative music at Woodlands Park with those playing the Frisbee golf. He wanted to know if they would put some signage up to remind everyone that they are in a family-friendly neighborhood park. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8 p.m. And I do not have any further business, and our next meeting will be on May 10th at 6:30 p.m.
Planning and zoning?
Thank you, Your Honor. We met on April 6th, and President myself, Mary Van Corey Coleman, also Kate Sandretto, our Law Director, Brody Walters, and Mark Easterling, the Deputy Planning and Zoning Administrator. The prior month's minutes were approved. Then we had a few rezoning requests. The first was for 2 adjacent properties, 940 and 950 Westbrook Drive, which is currently zoned for park. And the rezoning request is to take it to multifamily residential. 940 Westbrook is about just a little over a half an acre and has a multifamily apartment building. It was built in 1970. The adjacent property also has a multifamily apartment building built in 1970, and that's a little under half an acre. Brody Walters explained that this was an oversight or an error in 2007 when it was rezoned to park area. The requested rezoning would make these 2 properties compliant with their current uses. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend approval of these 2 zoning requests to council. Across the street is 941 Westbrook Drive, which is about a quarter of an acre and has a 4-unit multi-family apartment building which was built in 1971. This parcel, as opposed to the other ones, has been zoned single-family residential for as long as available records indicate. Mr. Walters, as well as the Planning Commission, recommended to have that remain as R3 single-family. The structure as it exists can continue to be used as legal non-conforming, but in the event it had some significant damage, it would have to be rebuilt as a single-family residence. Mr. Kuhlman mentioned that the land use plan notes a lack of affordable rentals or multifamily housing. He pointed out there's a need for this type of housing. But Mr. Walters again noted that it can continue its use without being rezoned, but it's at risk if replacement is needed. What led to these requests is a person bought all three properties as a package. I indicated I'm not inclined to overrule the planning commission unless there's a compelling reason to do so. We agreed 3-0 to deny this particular rezoning request. Update on the historic district. As many of you may remember, the historic district, as we know it in the uptown area, is memorialized in the legal description that we've been fussing with to get fixed. But there are also designated listed properties outside the district. Those are the Schaller Building, the Engineering Building, the Spofford House, and the property with Fort Meigs on it. We'll have a public hearing in the future to at least formally mention those listed properties in the historic district ordinance. So this was more an informational item. We then asked Brody Walters to give the committee a short presentation on the more significant parts of the land use plan, not including the heights. We've committed to them to withhold discussion of that piece until the point will arrive a little bit later in these minutes. The land use plan is used to examine development patterns within the city, and it's also used as our blueprint for how and where the city should grow in the future. Jeff Blanker of American Steel Treating asked what the city would consider for its property on 6th Street. That particular property is included in the focus area in the land use plan, identified as boundary crossings at the corner of West Boundary and Indiana. And if you can visualize this, AST is in the southeast corner. He said they want to be a good neighbor and they're trying to consider offers to purchase the property that are not industrial uses. I asked whether the vision for that area in the land use plan is really feasible, as I'm not familiar with any private developer would buy a property just to have green space. Mr. Blanker stated he has an interested buyer, wants to turn the property into a senior living or assisted living community. Mr. Walters stated the city is not necessarily underserved in senior living facilities. Brody went on to explain a lot of people believe downtown Perrysburg does not begin until one crosses the railroad tracks. One of the plans embodied in the new land use plan is to draw downtown as far as possible, likely to 5th Street. Mr. Kuhlman asked what will be the action plan for the city to make the boundary crossings concept a reality. And Barry Van Hoosen pointed the city has not been proactive in purchasing and building parks, and usually we receive the donated land that the developer offers. Barry added that rather than having developers donate a relatively small piece of land, we should begin collecting the financial resources instead. And Brody Walters mentioned that the CIC is underutilized and could be used to acquire properties. I expressed the belief that this is an ambitious plan, but there are a lot of hurdles, but it would be nice to see the plan for boundary crossings happen. Mr. Kuhlman also liked the vision, but he said the city needs to be proactive. And Mr. Walters pointed out as we see the direction it is going, City Council could initiate rezoning property to keep moving things in the direction that's more aligned with the plan. Mr. Blanker stated that the owner of the AST property is looking to dispose of the whole site and to do so quickly. He has avoided industrial opportunities by trying to sell the property. And Mark Easterman suggested that they could list the property as industrial with a city-supportive rezoning tag included. Finally, we mentioned that the Heights is asking for, we at the committee are committed to give them 1 month advance notice before the meeting where the land use plan is discussed in regards to them. We agreed, we've identified 3 options for the Heights that should be drafted, and they are drafted actually, and that we should be prepared to discuss all 3. I felt, and I think the committee agreed, that there should be a committee of the whole meeting with all of council to consider the land use plan update as a whole. As I mentioned, we've committed to the Heights Committee to give them some advance notice. I just picked the date out of the blue to throw it out there. I don't know what you think, Jonathan, about maybe May 25 for a committee of the whole meeting.
Let me check. I pulled my calendar here, so.
We have council the prior week.
Let's see here. Just gonna take a minute for it to load. It wasn't open. So that would be a Wednesday. I know we have public utilities and service that day.
Oh, you do? Okay. What about, I mean, Tuesday we have personnel. Do we have another committee meeting though with personnel? Yeah, I seem to remember someone gathers here as we're leaving.
Any thoughts of maybe the Thursday, the 26th?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Thursday, heading into Memorial Day weekend.
Planning commission usually meets that Thursday.
Yeah.
How about the
Yes.
23rd, Monday?
We could do the 31st. There shouldn't be anything during that one because that's an extra Tuesday in the month.
That's,
When did you say?
May 31st.
Yeah?
that'll work for me. I don't know what the others.
That's fine.
May 31st.
Committee of the whole, what time?
Do you want to say 6:30 just to keep everything consistent? You want to do it a little earlier, maybe 5?
It could be a long meeting.
Yeah, let's do a little early.
If people could do it, I'd say go a little earlier, 5:30.
Okay.
Do 6.
Big part.
So like 6 would be better for the,
Okay.
okay with it.
Do 5:55?
Be fine too.
Well, Jonathan will be in charge of that meeting, so he's gonna make it move along quickly.
Is that a shot across the bow to Tom?
If you want to do it at 5:30, that's fine. I'll just be late. It's up to you guys.
I mean, do
May 31 at, what time did we say?
6?
you want to do 6 so the mayor can be present?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do 6 o'clock, and hopefully I'll try to send a message to Corey and make sure that that works for him too, but tentative, I will pencil it in and say that's the day.
Yeah, yeah. All right, end of report. We meet again on May 4 at 5:30 PM.
Very good, thank you.
Don't you have some legislation? Yeah.
I wanted to borrow Barry's pen to write these things. It's 28 and 29 are the adjacent properties, so I'll introduce ordinance 28, 2022, and 29, 2022, and move the rules be suspended to allow for the reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 28, 2022, amending the zoning map of the city of Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, to rezone property on Westbrook Drive from P Park to RM multifamily residential. Ordinance 29, 2022, amending the zoning map of the city of Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, to rezone property on Westbrook Drive from P Park to RM multifamily residential.
All right, I then introduce ordinances 28, 29, 2022, and move that they be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes. All right, then we'll go ahead with 30. I'll introduce it, as I indicated in the minutes, I intend to vote no, but I'd introduce ordinance 30-2022, and move the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
No. Wait, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 30, 2022, amending the zoning map of the city of Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, to rezone property on Westbrook Drive from R3 Single Family Residential to RM Multifamily Residential.
All right, again, I'll move passage, although I intend to vote no. I would move that ordinance 30-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Van Huzen?
No.
Mr. Weber?
No.
Mr. Fuller?
No.
Ms. Matroni?
No.
Mr. McCarthy?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
And now that is the end of my report. We're still meeting on May 4th.
Thank you. Personnel. David report or anything? Didn't meet. All right. Public utilities?
No report, Mayor. Thank you. Next meeting is April 27th.
Very good. Thank you. Service?
No report. Next meeting, April 27th at 5:30 PM.
Under other business administration, asked that the council would be so inclined to enter into executive session to discuss the possible sale or purchase of real estate.
I'll make a motion to move into executive session to discuss purchase or sale of property.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller? Ms. Matroni? Yes. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. Honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go around that.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and-
I got you. And you know what? I knew that.
And I want to, what I should say is, no, would you please separate the first one and the rest?
Oh, that was
I mean,
fine.
you gotta have it right.
It might be the best way.
Least resistance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got drones in there. I've got a number of echoes in there, there's foxes in there. I got a whole list. Home has got games, they have aerials. Yeah, but they're talking about doing that kind of like as a pass. Some executive sessions. Kind of little walking, but well, they got an agreement to group the group everything. Well, they have, one of the fun things is that for some reason, somebody came and fully told the diocese they could not keep that 4 acres, they had to sell it to stuff, these guys. They could not keep that for, they could sell the other acre ground, but they couldn't keep that 4 acres that had been sold. And me, it's like, why could the diocese 4 acres? But yeah, if you get a chance to talk to Richard Baranowski, he goes to those meetings. I miss a lot of them because back they said have them on days where I've got either a meeting going on or I've got Mary Mother of Sorrow Cemetery. Oh, yeah. I miss those. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got the parcel map at home that they have, that they gave out and all that stuff. Yeah, it's just, it's, I don't know, on the crazy side of it there. No one, it never should have done. It never should have been. Yeah, it is. That's why the relatively good. No problem, they want them to take it over. Once they're really into it, doing stuff, we're all. Yeah, they've been having stuff in there. Yeah, like I said, the only thing they're supposed to do with it is possibly like a walking path through it.
Yeah. Yes.
You don't really know where exactly where they are on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and here's, I don't, but you know, and I'm not saying to tell. Make sure this kid be really good. Well, I mean, that's a big thing. No, I'll be mad at him. He didn't tell anybody. It is, but I can see. Well, he's not so good. But just like Robin. That was Mallory's for Madeline Rexer, who was like a teacher over at Toad, was still.
Oh, she can receive it.
The Mallory's 28. She's stressed out. Their comment was, gave her her sweater to wear so she would feel warm. I mean, that Madeline was an older teacher, and most kids were. But just stuff, little stuff like that. Just doing things.
I would throw it right on the box, but I would out.
I don't know. Why do these schools should be?
Yeah, we had it in the band, way back then, in the late 60s. And I remember at the football games, my brother's, he would march onto the field with his arm on the guy's shoulder. And his parents. Anyway, so they did their own like, versions of the things. They didn't, anyway, he grew up to be very independent. He told me the story heard that they complained that they used at home the box potatoes, the plates, his mother. She heard that he complained about it at school, which is the LPH. And so he said, well, my mom had me stand next to her at the sink, and I had to feel the potatoes. He's blind. And he said, I did, sure. But, and he said, they were not eating, but they wanted to make sure you could do without them.
Well, sure, that's, I mean, how do you prepare your kids?
And so he learned, and one thing, not to complain about one. But he's very independent. But that's just, you know, they graduated from that school way back then. I can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Is it helpful? Yeah. First at 6 o'clock. Yes, it was. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How can you stand it? These are the meetings. Does she still come? Does she still have? Oh, I didn't know if they were. Yeah. Oh, so about here. Yeah. Well, I'm curious what she's going to come up with. Is she going to come up with the third option? Bring counsel, but I don't know further. What's that third option? Well, she did. I mean, did she sell to a developer? That just proves the whole thing. That just proves the whole thing. If you're gonna sell, why are you complaining? Yeah. Why is that? I don't know. Maybe so. Do you get frustrated? Yeah. No. Yeah. You can try it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I mean, you might think, yeah. But it's because. No, it was like a. It's just a dump. Well, this is the pro one. I told you about that. Yeah, that's. No, that's the. I know. That's. Yes, it's a good. That's why it should be what we call common sense. Yeah, this is something that's really fun. Good. I know. It's just sad. And then going to touch it. I like her a lot. Yeah. I wasn't sure, but. Mm-hmm.
That's what they do anything else, whether it's one or another. They can't do the executive session without being here. So that's other business. That's what you get out the market. Something.
Oh, this year.
I don't know.
Maybe.
They used to tell the story and stuff like that. I got pictures.
Oh, that.
I got pictures on stuff, I got pictures on them. That was some also out there. You gotta do the family tree. Try to work with you there.
Well. Oh. Yeah. Great. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Well, which are
They were trying to do with, yeah. They talked to people.
I haven't seen that.
Well, it's all they have to do something there. Most of the stuff, probably, yeah, that. There, where it makes, where it makes money to pay for all that.
That's not rocket science. I thought I should be talking about. That can take forever. And it's bigger.
She's also the council. It used to be the court had a job on it, you know that? Yeah, they went to an executive session, so they had a big group in here discussing something. I went to a discussion to discuss this and that. Told people they were planning on doing anything that's night out in there. A few people left, a lot of people stayed. And all of a sudden, somebody came back, shuffled around a few papers and all that, got a sheet of paper, went back around, after another 10 minutes. Got more people came back out after like 20 minutes, again, same guy. Going through paperwork and all that, grabbed something else, went back around. There were fewer here. Then after like another 45 minutes, came out, we were back for like an hour and a half. Came out, saw there was only 2 people here, and nobody was here really for the thing. Grabbed another sheet of paper, walked back into the room, and like 30 seconds later, they're all coming back out here, they voted whatever they were talking about. No, they don't buy that. It's about property. No, they didn't say who, they'll purchase the property. For them to do that, it's got money. You can't go back and got somebody else to purchase the property.
No, I'm sorry. Somebody has to tell me for us.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember, I read something about the city property somewhere. See? I can't remember what you were talking about. What was that? Old Boundary. The old, that boundary at, National Company. Talk about they want to try to sell that to the city. No, city and Avenue, West Boundary. Have the old Master Chem building down? Some of the companies in there. No, Master Chem, Peter Stanford is on 6. I'm talking about Master Chem. So it was on a thing that a company would talk about having people looking into it if the city wants to buy it. And get where I was at. I just wonder if there'll be something on that one. But if somebody places the town, you want to buy, if that might not for $2 million.
Oh, my knees.
You could stick around.
I did. Sure. Just to hear you say meeting is still recording. Yes. In 2 minutes.
Need a motion to go back.
Now
Now if it comes back, then, first one missing? Oh,
Missing our clerk.
yeah.
This is blank.
No, no. It's a funny. About time.
I'll make a motion to return to the executive session.
Second?
Discussion, roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
What do we vote?
We're back in session. Or out of executive session.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Aye.
Aye.